I think that it's really, really tough to actually be authentic. Like, I think it's so easy to seem authentic, but to actually put yourself out there, it is really hard. Living in Florida, it's kind of a scary place politically. And I recently did an interview where I kind of was asked this question, and I realized for the first time that I have this mentality of like, I want to stay and fight, or I want to like do what I can. It means everything to me personally. And wow, I like weirdly just almost got emotional just talking about this. That's so crazy you saying that. I don't think anyone's ever put it like that to me ever in my life. So that's wild.
Hello, I'm Ben Cicchetti, and this is Queer Talker with Robby Weber. Robby is an author of young adult LGBTQ+ books, and he's not just one of my favorite queer authors, he is one of my favorite authors altogether. But before we get to the episode, I've got a question for you. Have you subscribed to Queer Talker yet? If not, I'll wait, because it's a small action that will make a massive difference. It's going to allow me to grow this podcast and allow me to bring you the best and the queerest episodes every single time. So wherever you are watching or listening to this episode, hit that subscribe button. But now to my episode with Robby. As this is the first time we are getting to speak, if I wanted to instantly get a sense of who you are, as someone that's read all 3 of your books that are out so far,
Thank you.
which character in your book would you say you are most similar to, and why?
I think I would have to say Harry, even though I want to say Zach or Teddy or Milo. I think they all have little personality traits, but like Harry, I think that I'm very ambitious and very well-meaning, but I think there's some, I don't know, I guess you could say like some ADHD traits in there that might get in the way of my goals. And yeah, I feel like it's just, his love for movies and for books and everything like that. I think it all kind of comes through in Harry.
I love that. And actually, Logan in If You Change Your Mind is one of my favorite characters in your books. There's something so wholesome about him, something so lovable about him. So, yeah, I love that book and can totally appreciate that
Thank
answer.
you. I appreciate that. I love Logan too.
Yeah. I feel like you must end up kind of loving all the characters in your books and having kind of an emotional attachment to them all. So I feel terrible making you do this kind of Sophie's Choice moment of picking between all of them. I believe to understand an LGBTQ+ person as an adult, you first need to learn about them as a young person. So what should I know about you as a child or a teenager to understand kind of the Robby that sits in front of me today?
Yeah, I mean, I think probably the biggest thing, and like you can see my background and my Instagram, and obviously I'm a writer. I think I've always just been a voracious reader, and I think that stories have always kind of been my life. And so I think that's probably the biggest thing. Just as a kid, I always had a book, and I was always writing little stories. And I think that carried through. I remember in middle school, like giving my friends my little books that I would write, and have them read them. So I think that's probably the biggest thing, is just that like I truly live and breathe stories, and that also, followed into my professional life outside of books. But yeah, that's just kind of always been like the most important thing to me.
It's amazing that you're now an author, right? Like that must be quite an amazing feeling to know that something you loved for that long. Not many people get to turn something they love into a career, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So it's amazing that you've been able to kind of turn that into a career, which is incredible.
Yeah, it feels like it doesn't feel real, but yeah.
Yeah, it's an amazing achievement. And obviously your books do an incredible job of depicting LGBTQ+ people in them. But for you, do you remember the first LGBTQ+ person you either became aware of in real life or through media?
That's so tough because I don't really remember like consciously recognizing it. I think honestly, probably like seeing Will and Grace as a kid, like on TV, and not really even watching it a lot myself, but just, it being on and kind of understanding like these are gay characters. Which is probably a really positive kind of first intro to it, because it's so like normalized and it's not like made to be a traumatic thing. That's probably the first I could think of.
Yeah, I loved Will and Grace. So
And now
I
I've
totally agree.
watched a lot as an adult, and I still think it's very funny and cute.
Yeah, it lives up, and it continues to kind of thrive. It's one of those shows like Your Friends and other things that kind of just kind of live on forever. And I suspect even now is probably bigger than it was back then through kind of reruns, which is amazing. Um, Authenticity is something I spend a lot of time thinking about, and I feel like I gravitate to people who I also feel are very authentic. You come across as very authentic in all you do, from what I've kind of perceived from a social media perspective. When do you feel you first felt authentically yourself? And then when did you feel you could bring that authenticity to everything you do, which is kind of the next step, right? You can feel authentic in yourself. I can feel like I'm living my truth, but then bringing it to everything kind of unapologetically.
Yeah, this is a big question. I think I'm still learning that, and I appreciate you saying that you can like feel authenticity. I think that's one of the hardest things for me, especially just being like at all in the public eye and having social media and readers and doing things like interviews and stuff. I think that there is sort of naturally an image that you sort of create and that you sort of try to adhere to. Like specifically when I first started as a book influencer, I did a lot of middle grade and young adult, and so I felt like it had to be like super family friendly, and that was really hard as I started to write YA to have realistic characters, like realistic 17 and 18-year olds. You know, it's not all going to be super family friendly and super like, you know, just squeaky clean, I guess. And so I think that the nice thing about having readers and having an agent and having editors who believe in me and kind of tell me that like my stories are okay is I think it actually reinforces that I can be authentic. So it really is truly something I feel like I'm learning. As I write each book, I think I'm able to put more authenticity into every single one. So yeah, I mean, I think, you know, I think in like middle school, I kind of learned that there was this like fake it till you make it thing to confidence. And I think I've just been kind of building on that ever since. But I do think that having my books published and having readers like validate my voice and experience and thoughts has helped me a lot. Because I think that it's really, really tough to actually be authentic. Like I think it's so easy to seem authentic, but to actually put yourself out there, it is really hard. So it's a constant growing opportunity.
Yeah, I bet. I guess also because you have to, in your books, I'm assuming anyway, as someone that's never written a book, you have to put yourself into it a little bit, and your heart must go into it a little bit. And then also when you think about social media, which is obviously a big part of your presence as well, you know, social media doesn't necessarily lend itself to authenticity, and therefore you can get this sense you have to kind of filter your life and so on and so forth. Has there been kind of any negativity you've had to deal with from a social media perspective, negativity from reviews? Because I'm just always curious. Like, as I was launching this podcast, being completely transparent, I had people say to me, you know, you just be ready for the negative comments, be ready for people to not be kind. And I kind of was therefore mentally prepared for it. But I'm just wondering, as someone that's kind of been at this for longer than I have, how you've dealt with any negativity that's kind of come your way, either on social media, through books, or anything else.
I do think that the negative stuff, it's so hit or miss. Sometimes someone will say something and it'll really affect me, and it's so silly, and it's like the smallest thing that anyone
Right.
around me that I tell, they're like, "Why do you care? Like this is so stupid," right? And then like the big things, like I get like a really bad review, it doesn't bother me at all. And I know it sounds like I'm being really like I'm just saying that, but it truly like the bad reviews don't bother me because I know that art is subjective. So I think it is like yeah, I think it's like maybe if it feels personal, like if it feels like someone's like attacking me on social media versus like they read my book and thought my characters sucked. Like, okay, it wasn't for you, and I can understand that. And I've had books where that's the case. But I do think sometimes the smallest little comments on social media, you're like, you have to remind yourself, like, this does not matter. This person doesn't know me. They know like a fragment of me. Um, I don't know. I always worry about it too because I'm like I feel like I don't get enough, like knock on wood, negative comments. So I'm just like, is this like something that I have to look forward to in the future, or is this going to be like stay the same? I don't know.
Yeah, I completely agree. I completely agree with that. And I think it is, you know, you do have to prepare yourself for the negativity. And I guess if you're going to put your work out there, you have to be prepared. for the negative reviews. As someone I haven't read, I'm actually an Audible person, so I've listened to your books. Anyone that's given a negative review is clearly wrong.
Thank you.
I just finished What is the
Obviously.
Ceiling while I was in New York, which was the just perfect place to listen to it because I was literally walking around New York City listening to it. So
Love
that
that.
was amazing. Yeah, it was quite the experience. And I just think it's really important, actually, that books like yours exist. So young people, so people of all ages, people like me, can read about queer love because when I was a young adult and when I was a teenager, those books just didn't exist. I couldn't see myself reflected in any books. So I think your books, I hope anyway, are making it easier for people to see themselves reflected in media such as books. Let's talk about kind of how you got started writing. When did you start writing? You obviously mentioned you started writing kind of small books at school and things like that. But when did you kind of professionally start writing? And how do you kind of, or what inspiration do you draw when you're writing?
Yeah. So, I mean, if you can picture, like how I said, my characters are all very ambitious and all have big dreams. And I think I was probably in middle school trying to query agents. Like, I literally think I thought I was going to be, what is it, like Christopher Paolini? Is that his name? He wrote Aragon and he was like 15 or 16 and he published a book or something. I think I thought that was going to be me. So, like, I truly was like, I know it sounds kind of crazy. I was like trying to invest in my author career. Like, I mean, probably when I was 15, 14, 15 and on. So I was learning about how to write. I was writing books, querying them like full length books. And so I was really trying to like be a writer. And then I think I was 21 when I started to kind of pivot a little bit because I realized that what I was basically doing is trying to write what I thought was like in the market at the time. So I was writing something that was like Harry Potter or like Gossip Girl or like Divergent, like whatever was kind of cool. And then I was like, you know what? I'm gonna write like a love story because I like that. And it didn't sell because it was bad, but
Okay.
I did learn a lot about queering. And so the next one I wrote, I was like, I'm gonna apply everything I've learned over all of these books and all of these like, experiences with agents. And I wrote another book and it took about a year, but then I got an agent and it's still like crazy to even say that to you now because it feels like I could have just continued like what I was doing from when I was 14 on of just like writing a book and trying to query it and writing a book and trying to query it. So for it to like actually catch, I think it was very validating. But yeah, I mean, I think at 21, I realized like I had just, I was gonna say like a failed stint. I don't think I had a failed stint in fashion, but I did what I wanted to do in it, and I realized it wasn't what I wanted for my career, like I always thought. So I was like, okay, but the only thing that I actually really want to do forever is write, and so I need to like take it seriously and figure out how to do it. So yeah, I would say around then, and then ever since, it's just kind of been this thing that's just evolving and growing.
I love that. And I guess so interesting what you say about, I guess there's this easy option or more difficult and more challenging option of kind of copying what other people are doing or trying to jump on the trends of other, Twilight came out and suddenly there was hundreds of vampire
Right.
and werewolf books out as an example. So where do you kind of continue to draw inspiration on for your books and to keep them personal to you and very distinct in their own right?
Yeah, I think there's this like Nancy Myers quote that I think I put in If You Change Your Mind because I'm very into like putting things that inspire me into my work to hopefully inspire other people. But she says, write what you know and write what no one else can. And I think that is what I try to do. And sometimes it's not good and sometimes it fails and I have people around me who kind of can tell me that. And so that's nice. But I do think that I can bring a unique lens and voice. And so I think for me it's remembering that. And it's like sometimes I'll see something or I'll listen to a book and I'll be like, God, I couldn't do this. Or like I this isn't something that my brain would ever think of. And I try to just remember that like that's good because we all need to be able to bring something unique to the table. So I try not to think anymore about like trends and because if you do also it's kind of terrifying because it's like all the time people are saying YA is dying and it's like if I listen to that I would be very depressed all the time and scared. So I don't know. It's a lot of like probably, Teddy's delusion as well of like I can just do whatever I want and it'll be great and it'll work out.
Yeah. Do you have like a writing spot? Do you have a space you go to write? Do you have music you listen to while you're writing because it inspires you? Does any of that kind of take place during the writing process?
Music, absolutely. I do playlists for all my books, sometimes characters as well. And then in terms of the spot, it actually changes for every book. So like my process is completely different for every book, and it's like unpredictable, which I kind of like. I almost feel like the process is like choosing me, which sounds kind of woo-woo, but sometimes it'll be like one book I read a lot in the morning, one book I read a lot at night, one book at the desk, one book at the couch. So it's very book specific.
Yeah. Do you release those playlists? Like, I feel like that would be such a listen to be able to
I
go in and
know.
listen to the music that inspired a book as I listen to it.
I've thought about it and I've tried to like create, I feel like I want to curate them more because I feel like sometimes it's like, I feel like people would listen to it and it would be something completely, they just like, why is this here? And it's like, because for me, it inspired a scene, but like it would make no sense, you know? So I don't
Yeah,
know.
the context.
Yeah.
We are obviously seeing more LGBTQ plus books coming out than ever before, which is amazing. But alongside that, obviously, we are seeing more backlash. We are seeing book bans, even in certain places, even in the US at the moment. How has that impacted you? Has it impacted you? Or is it creating any additional challenges for you as a queer author?
I mean, living in Florida, it's kind of a scary place politically. So there's a lot of legislation here and a lot of conversation around this. And I recently did an interview where I kind of was asked this question, and I realized for the first time that I have this mentality of like I want to stay and fight, or I want to like do what I can, because I think, a lot of young queer people especially don't have access to the same resources, don't have access to like the financial stability to buy books and buy stories. And so I think like fighting for books to be in libraries and fighting for stories to be told, and for them to have access is something that I'm able to do and that I'm passionate about. I will say like challenges I haven't necessarily, I've been lucky that I haven't encountered them. I don't know if it, affects other areas of the industry. I'm curious because I've noticed publishers, when it comes to promoting queer titles, it seems like there was this like ramp up and then it kind of slowed down. And I feel like they're not doing it as much. And I'm wondering if that has to do with legislation and like, staying on good lists or something. I don't really know, but I've noticed that, and I know friends have noticed it. So that to me is a little bit discouraging because I think like we look to our publishers to fight against book bans, to promote stories that challenge this type of thinking. So I don't know if it's a direct correlation or if it's something that we're just noticing or if it just has to do with sales, but I do think that I've noticed a little bit of a like a pulling back of the championing of queer stories, which I don't love.
Yeah, no, that must be tough. I guess that's one of the powers, I guess, of social media is the ability to promote your
Mhm.
books yourself as well, right? And I've seen your presence on social media is incredibly strong. How important is that ability for you to connect directly to kind of the people that are reading your books through social media? I know you do live Q&As and other things. How important is that kind of to your process?
Yeah, I mean it means everything to me personally, and Um, wow, I like weirdly just almost got emotional just talking about this, but like I get messages from people that I can't even believe, and like I will literally look at my phone and be like, is this person like just like are they just saying something really nice so that I'll respond to them? Because I know that sometimes it feels like that. I'm like, there's no way that I changed your life that much through this book. And they really mean it, and they will send me long paragraphs and tell me um, just all kinds of things. I just had someone tell me that they live in Spain and that they love reading and listening to my books because it helps them with their English, which is just like another level that I never thought of. Like they're like, it's accessible, it feels good, it's nice, like I just enjoy it. Had people tell me that it's affected like how they've dealt with toxic relationships. People have joined sports teams because of I Like Me Better. People have like it's just all kinds of stuff that I'm like I to me it like means everything. So that pushes me to if I'm feeling like I don't want to create something or I feel, it's really, really easy to compare yourself to other people and feel like, oh, I'm not doing as well as this person. And the thing that grounds me is like, even if it's five people, like it means something to someone. So that connection it's so important to me.
Yeah, and it goes back to what we were saying about just how important books like yours are, and it's so important they exist. It's so important that people continue to support them, publishers continue to support them. We talked about inspiration a little bit, and I'm super curious about the inspiration that goes into these books. So when you are putting together these plots and when you're putting together these characters, do you draw inspiration from people in your life? Do friends come to you and say, I feel like I'm that character you just put in that book, or events that have happened in your life? How do you kind of draw inspiration?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one thing that I've been pretty like open about is my closest friends and family have inspired characters, and they're not like full, like carbon copies, but they are very much present in the books. And I think that for me, it's like twofold. It's one that I like the idea of looking back, and it's kind of like this journal entry of, like a friendship or a relationship that meant a lot to me. And also, I think it's just authentic. It's really easy for you to tell that, like, you know, the main character's best friend, you can tell that they're best friends because that is inspired by something, right? And I think that
Yes.
people can tell. Um, but also experiences are a very big part of my inspiration. And like Benji's song lyrics were all just like me finally being able to just like play around and write songs about all of my past relationships and things like that. And there's stuff like that that I do that's just fun that, like, nobody knows or needs to know, but like I get to have fun with it. Um, I'm not into like revenge writing. I know some authors like to write like characters based off people they don't like or people who hurt them, which I don't do. But people who positively inspire me or and leave an impression in my life, I definitely weave that in.
Yeah, I love that. I love that you get to live your Ariana Grande fantasy and kind of write
It's
lyrics down
Yeah,
and
I mean it's just fun. Like it was a fun time. I have so many song lyrics, and I'm like, these might not be that good, but like it's one time that I get to write fake song lyrics, so I'm gonna go for it.
100%. I love that. And there's this sensation that many of us get when we read like books like yours. It was talked about a lot when the first season of Heartstopper came out. And it's kind of a sense of loss, especially for people in kind of my generation, because for many of us, we didn't get to experience that kind of young love, that high school love and relationships. Is that something that you've experienced personally yourself? And has that in any way motivated you to write these books so that people can experience that through your work?
Yeah, I would say to some extent, for sure. I think I've been lucky in that I've had a lot of experiences with dating since, I mean, I think probably when I was like 14 on. And I think that is helpful for me because I've been able to really look at how my dating life as a gay teen, like I've been able to write from that teen lens. Which is always it's interesting to me because I do like see reviews where people are like, "Oh, I wish I had gay kids in high school to date. Like Harry has so many options and things like that." And so I also understand that it's like a more unique experience, I think. Um, but I do think that, and also I think dating was just so, I'm a romance author. Like I think I've always loved love stories, and I think so for me, I probably was just more focused on dating and like wanting a relationship and things like that. Um, but I will say that I think obviously none of those were like happily ever after experiences when you're young. So there's a lot of romanticizing. And I'm also aware of the fact that I think, you know, a lot of readers either didn't have gay teens in their school to date, or they just weren't comfortable being out. So it's something that I am cognizant of, and I think it's like it's kind of taking my experiences, thinking about that lens as well, and then also kind of writing it as if it's like in this modern day. Because I mean, now it's so different. Like we have representation, and we see that people's dating experiences, are so different because people are more comfortable. Um, so yeah, I know it's a long answer, but I think that like I guess it's sort of I do understand the loss. But I also am like grateful because it's like I'm glad I didn't have a high school sweetheart that I like, just like settled down with kind of thing. Not, I mean, for some people that works out really well, and I'm happy for them. But for a lot of people, it doesn't. And so I don't know. I just like I have the most annoying outlook on things that like people cannot like. Some people love and some people hate. Of like, I just don't really wish anything was different. And I know that's like so annoying to some people because it's like obviously things would have been easier or better if they were. But like now I'm able to have this lens and have this POV and write. From this angle. So I don't know. I guess it's kind of just like an acceptance and a like gratitude for the lens that I do have, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And also, most of us or a lot of us wouldn't hope for anything to change because it's what led us to where we are.
Right.
Therefore, to change things, you may never have landed where you've landed
Exactly.
today.
Yeah.
And something you touched on a little bit earlier on, often a lot of LGBTQ plus stories in books, in movies, in TV shows are focused on challenge or trauma. Yours are kind of just full of joy. Like, obviously, these relationships have some drama,
Mhm.
but there's no trauma so far in your books anyway. We'll await the next book to see if that's still the case. Was it important to you to tell stories that celebrated the joys of queer love rather than kind of the trauma and the challenges that many have had in the past?
Yeah, I mean, that literally was the impetus for me writing If You Change Your Mind. I think I realized, like, I love all of these love stories and these rom-coms that are just, like, happy-go-lucky and feel good, and I would gravitate towards them, and need that feel-good feeling, and there just weren't they didn't really exist back then, and, like, it sounds like I'm talking about, like, prehistoric ages when I say back then, but, like, we're talking, like, 2018,
Yeah.
there really weren't queer joy stories, and we're just now getting to this point where there's so many of them, and that's amazing, but, like, when I was writing If You Change Your Mind, I remember agents, like, not thinking it would sell and being like, this isn't like there isn't a coming out story, there's not a challenge, um, and there aren't really readers for this, and so I think that it was really important to me to be like, "No, there is positivity and, joy, and it doesn't have to just be challenge and trauma, and people can have challenge and trauma that's not related to their sexuality," and I think that just as important, the stories about coming out and that sexuality-based the challenges and trauma are so important, and we need to have those. I think it's equally important for them to have, readers to have an option to read something lighter, and I think that, like, I really relate to Teddy in one way, who's the character in What Is This Feeling? But, he's, this eternal optimist, but he also really struggles with anxiety and, like, this fear of, like, things not working out. So it's like he's so optimistic, but then, like, if something seems like it's gonna throw it off, then it's like, "Wait, like, how do I fix this?" And I think for me, channeling my efforts and my energy into positivity is so important, and it keeps me grounded and keeps me optimistic. So, I think it's something that I can offer people, but also it's something that I need in my life. Like, I need to be able to put this optimism and hope into something.
Yeah, I also think you give people a place to escape to. Like, it's no surprise that the world we're living in right now, especially for LGBTQ plus people, can feel very dark. There can be lots of really negative headlines on a regular basis. Social media can feel really dark. I think being able to kind of escape into books is really, really important. I'll take your books as an example because I listen to them. Often I'm listening to them on my dog walks or on my commute where I actually just want to be able to escape from the day to day and focus on something positive, something that's going to
Yes.
bring joy. So I can only say that I personally really appreciate the escapism that comes from your books. It's amazing. Obviously, we started this conversation talking about your younger self. If you could give your younger self one piece of advice, what would it be? And would it be different if I said, what one piece of advice would you give to an LGBTQ plus person, a young LGBTQ plus person today?
Yeah, I would say it's the most cliche answer ever, but I would tell myself to enjoy life more as it's happening. And I'm still learning that lesson. I think all my characters are learning that lesson. I think the day that my characters aren't learning that lesson, maybe that means I finally figured it out. But I think for young LGBTQ plus people, like we kind of talked about, I just had a really lucky experience as a gay person. I've just had so much acceptance and haven't really had challenges based around my sexuality. So I would say just to anyone who might be experiencing challenges around that, to hold on to hope and to have hope because a lot can be scary or uncertain, but I do genuinely believe that, like, things do get better, and I think that, um, we have the ability to get through difficult things, and yeah, I mean, I'm a romantic. Like I said, I'm an optimist, so I think, I have that hope, and I hope that other people will hold on to that.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's amazing advice. It might be an odd question to ask, but I think a lot about legacy in that you are going to leave something behind on this world, right? Your books will sit on a shelf
Wow, so
forever or for a very long time, whether it's digital, whether it's, actually in a bookshelf. So you're going to leave something kind of pretty incredible for the world.
that's so
What
crazy you
legacy?
saying that. I don't think anyone's ever put it like that to me ever in my life. So that's wild.
Yeah, your name will live on for a
Wow.
long time, we all hope. But what legacy, I guess, do you hope your books do leave? What legacy do you hope you leave as part of the kind of the LGBTQ plus community, or do you not spend a ton of time kind of dwelling on it?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't thought of it that way of like legacy and like, how long it would live on. Obviously, the things that we've touched on, like positivity, hope, optimism, joy, um, romance, all that kind of stuff. But I think that like the number one thing that I still do this in all my books, and I think that you can tell, but I sort of forget because I am always talking about like queer joy. But I've also set out from the beginning to write flawed characters and characters that not everyone's going to love, and they don't. There's a lot of people who don't resonate with Harry and Zach and Teddy and Milo, and they don't understand why they make the decisions they make. They don't understand why they are people pleasers or why they are so driven and why their ambitions can get in the way of making good decisions. And so I think for me, I think this releasing some shame around being perfect, around being the perfect type of gay person or type of person in general. Um, I think that for the people who resonate with my main characters, for them to feel seen and for them to feel like whatever their flaws are, whether it's, you feel like you're like Teddy and people tell you that you daydream too much, or you're like Zach and you want everyone around you to be happy to your own detriment, or Milo, which is the one that's coming out, but he's so ambitious that like he doesn't know where it starts and ends, where what he wants and what he should do and what's right and wrong, like all these things, like whether you feel like those are parts of you that you want to destroy or are ashamed of or whatever. I think it's powerful to see yourself in media, but not only to see yourself in media, but to see someone like you who isn't demonized and who is given a chance for a genuine arc and growth. Like none of my characters, I'm not excusing their flaws, but I'm saying like they have the ability to learn. They're 17, 18. They are learning lessons. Um, so yeah, that's probably like one of the biggest things is like I never want to stop. The characters that I'm writing in my adult projects are also very flawed, and I don't want to ever write a character where everyone is like, I love this character. It's like a Mary Sue. I don't know if people still use that term, but like I don't want to write that. I want to write something that feels real and challenging, and if people don't resonate with it, then I think that I've done a good job. So I think that's important to me.
Yeah, I agree. And I think actually it's the flaws in the characters that kind of hook you. Like listening to Zach and just be like, no, don't do that. Don't
Right.
make that decision. Like
Right. And
it's
it
what
also
hooks
makes for a
you.
better story. Like,
Yeah.
come on, he's making decisions that are dumb. But like also I think one thing that's interesting to me is like and I don't know if it's just that people are just so different, but to me, and also I mean I know these characters like the back of my hand, so I know where they start and where they end. So I am biased. But like for Zach, when people don't get him or they hate him, it's so hard for me to understand because it's like you can tell that everything he's doing is from the right place. He's trying, like he's doing the wrong thing, but he's trying. So I think that is to me like if especially young queer people can see that and be like, you know what? Like it's okay to make a mistake because at the end of the day, I have friends or family or I have resources to learn and to grow. Like to me that's so worth the flaws or, it being presented as negative.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think it's the layers that obviously make these characters so incredible to read, and you feel like there's a depth to them, which is really really
Thanks.
important.
Thank you.
We will end with our rapid fire questions. The
Okay.
first of which is that as a queer community, we do love a good icon, especially like a powerhouse woman. Think Gaga, Whitney, Britney, Cher, Kylie, everyone in between. Who would be your ultimate go-to queen?
I'm actually going to see Kylie in a few
Me
days.
too.
But
Yeah.
um, the first person who comes to my mind is Marina from Marina and the Diamonds because I think she was just so
Yeah.
formative for me, and I do think a lot of people think of her as like a gay icon, pop icon. But she writes about all the same themes that I write about, which I only kind of more recently put together. She writes a lot about like ambition and feeling like enough and her struggles in romance. So I think and she also does it while like being really fabulous, and her concerts are really fun and her fashion. So I feel like for me, I always gravitate towards her. I think it's that like the songwriting and the really like you talk about authenticity. I think that throughout her career, her authenticity has gone through the roof. So I love that.
That's amazing. And you'll have to let me know how Kylie is. I'm seeing her at the end of May, so you'll have to
Okay,
let me know
I will
how
let you
it
know. I'm excited.
is. What is your favorite queer TV show, movie, musical, or book? And obviously, I'm not going to let you pick one of your own books.
Yeah.
So, but what's your favorite?
It's so hard, and I'm trying to think because there's so many. I think I'm gonna say this might be like controversial because there's so much out there, but I really loved Love Victor, and
Yes.
it's just so feel good, but it also has like some depth, and I just remember also like it came out during the pandemic, and I really needed it, so I don't know, I just love it. I have such a soft spot, and I like putting it on in the background sometimes because it's so sweet.
Yeah, I love that show, and its music, its theme song
Yeah,
is one of my favorite songs.
I
I love
love
it.
the
It just
theme
kind of brings
song.
you so much joy. So
Yes,
yeah,
you're instantly
I'm totally
happy.
with it. Yes, exactly. If you could write a book based in any city during any season, where and when would it be based?
So I think I would love to write a book in like New England in the fall, which I think is surprising because all of my books are summer and like
Yep.
beachy and stuff. I don't really know enough about it, but like the idea of like a Gilmore Girls, like
Mm.
orange leaves everywhere, Thanksgiving, pumpkin pie, that seems cozy.
I love that. I love that. I would personally love for you to write a book based around the Christmas festive period because I
Yeah,
just love that
I would
period,
love
and
that
it's
too.
just I think that would be epic in like a New York City or a London.
Ooh.
London's got a lot to offer, so that would be amazing.
I haven't been to London and I've been needing like a reason to justify a research trip, so I think I need to
There
go
you
at
go.
Christmas.
I'm glad I could give that to
Yes.
you. If you had to lip sync for your life, what song would you choose?
I think going off of the Marina thing, I think I would have to do Prima Donna. I think it's so fun, and you could just be so dramatic, and
Yeah,
everybody knows it.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So yeah, I would do that.
I love that. I can sense the drama. It'd
Oh
be
yeah.
amazing. If you could adapt any of your books into a movie, would you want to write the screenplay yourself or leave it to someone else? And then I guess which of your books would you
Mm,
choose to adapt first?
that's so hard. I think
Sophie's Choice again. Sorry.
I know. So I have to pick one.
Yes.
I think it would be If You Change Your Mind.
Mm.
And I think I'd like to collaborate if that's an option because I want to learn. I don't think that I like know enough to do it all myself, but I would love to have input. But if I had to pick, I would let someone else write it, which it would be so hard to do, but I don't know. I know my limits. I would like to like be involved in set design and things like that, but
I'm sure. I'm
yeah.
sure. So Netflix, if you're listening, that's
Hmm.
the choice we're looking for.
Yes.
If you could have one drink with any queer person, dead or alive, who would it be and why?
So I think there's like obviously like Oscar Wilde would be really cool to
Mm.
hear about um writing as a queer person in such a different time. But also I really want to say Dan Levy because he's just like he's so smart and creative and building this like empire and legacy for queer media, and I would just love to pick his brain and like hear how his brain works. So I think I'm gonna go with him.
Yeah, that's a great choice. Schitt's
Yeah.
Creek is one of my favorite TV
It's
shows
so
ever.
good. It's
So
so good. There's so many people I would love to just like pick their brain or just hear about their experience, but there's not as many people doing like exactly what he's doing right now. So
yeah,
I think that would be interesting.
yeah, I agree. Who in your network would you like to hear on this podcast? And what one question would you want me to ask them?
Oh my gosh. Okay, so I think I don't know if you've had this person as a guest, Jason June, the author. Okay, the best. Love JJ. And I think you should ask, gosh, there's so many questions that I would want you to ask JJ about his books. Maybe ask about how he picks his outfits because I want to know. He's always very stylish and he's just yeah, he's like the most stylish, I feel like, young adult queer author we have right now. So I would want to hear you guys talk about that. And then, obviously you could do some book promotion, but yeah.
Yeah. I love that. I'll definitely reach out and try and get them on the
Yes.
podcast.
Yes, you have to.
Final question.
Okay.
Your next book, Everything About You, comes out September 9th in full movie trailer style. So channel your inner Harry from If You Change Your Mind. How would you pitch this book to our listeners?
Gosh, pitching it as Harry would be so hard. I feel like every book I get like an elevator pitch down, and I don't have it down for this one yet, so you have to
Okay.
excuse me while I like fumble through it. But I feel like, Harry would describe it as like a movie trailer for real. He'd be like, this fall. And I think I mean, the real pitch is, it's two boys who are enemies to lovers in Paris. They're competing at a French fashion house. We have Milo, who's from Citrus Harbor, who won a contest, and so he is an apprentice. And then we have Rhodes, who comes from a family of famous footballers. And so Milo sees him as this like nepo baby, and Rhodes has a really bad reputation with tabloids. And so they're competing. They butt heads. They both want to be the best and get a job with this French fashion house at the end of the summer. And sparks fly, and there's a lot of scheming and sabotage and drama and competition, tension. It's the most tension I think in any of my books. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's a summer in Paris that people won't forget.
I love that. Summer in Paris that no one will forget.
That just came to me at the end. That was just like a off the cuff.
That was perfect. That's why you do what you do. It's all about the words. I love that. I'm super excited to listen to it. I will be downloading it on September 9th and checking it out. I will include links in the comments of this podcast so people can check it out as well. And obviously check out all your other incredible books. Robby, thank you so much for being on the podcast with me today. Thank you so much for sharing so much about the process, about your inspiration, but also just thank you so much for producing your books. I do genuinely believe they're important. I do genuinely believe, as you've experienced, they can change people's lives. They can give people escapism. So just thank you so much for your work, and thank you so much for being on the podcast with me today.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. This was so fun.
Quit talking walls and winding road. Together we